Mage is that obviously Stars Mage is just a lot of big minions, no spells.
This Mage, what do you make? It looks like he's not running Frost Novas in his primary deck because against Warrior, yes, this deck sometimes, you know, curves at you, but Frost Novas I think would be way, way, way too slow.
Yeah, the DawN in his primary list as well has 2 copies of Astromancer and the Archmage Antonidas, which a lot of players don't include at all, but some of them have them in their side list. So to have it in his main list against a Warrior is going to be very good for his matchup.
It's going to be a tough matchup here. Now we'll see how it goes. We see DawN and Pathra kicking it off with the Mage and Warrior. The double Clockwork Gnome and Wrench Caliber is a relatively quick opening, and is it quick enough is my question.
I'm not sure. I haven't played from the Bomb Warriors perspective too much, but I think you want to keep some sort of earlier pressure. Like we've seen rogues as well opt to play out SI7 agents, for example, over Miscreants just to get something more aggressive on the board and start wailing on the mage. And we see Pathra does keep a Pathra Clockwork Goblin for that game plan.
Yeah, interestingly enough, the Wrench Caliber was thrown, and I think that can just lead to just nods from things along the lines of basically Mirror Image and some of the other smaller minions. The Wrench Caliber, if your opponent goes wide, often just doesn't do enough anyway, and you aren't really relying on bombs to win this game. You want to just lock out their board quickly and then push a lot of damage.
Right. Sometimes early chip damage can add up to the point where a couple of bombs does end up finishing the job, but to get to that point you do need those early minions, and that's what Pathra was mulliganing for.
On the other side, DawN's opening hand, although it's always nice to have a Conjurer's Call in, is a little bit lackluster, I think. You know, not getting any of the elementals, which is mainly what for this single Sandbinder in the list is for, but not getting any of the elementals, Harrison's tech cards, Ziliax even, you know, not relevant for a while. DawN's probably just very happy he has this Arcane Intellect in hand.
Okay. Somebody ordered a bomb. Express mail service.
Yep. Paid extra for that one.
Yeah. Arcane Intellect coming out.
Yeah, this was just, I won't say life-saving, but it stopped DawN having a very, very poor opening game.
With the Giant pickup, we're going to see on coin the thing that Mage can do, where it's Elemental Vacation, play out the Giant for 2 mana, and then coin out the Conjurer's Calling. Very, very quick coming out from DawN if that's what he chooses to go for next turn. So Patra's going to have to figure out how she can deal with that. Obviously, she can't see that just yet, but
I honestly would not mind. We of course have the ultimate caster vision, but Omega Devastator, I feel like this game can spiral out of control way before turn 10 for Pathra. So I wouldn't mind the Omega Devastator played now, because then almost no matter what your opponent does next turn, you're feeling pretty safe. You have a 4/5, a 3/3, and then either rushing 5/5s or a Dinomatic, which is going to deal 5 to the board. So I feel like it almost opens up a win-win scenario, regardless of what DawN even does next turn. He could do powerful turns, and you still have answers.
Yeah, I would like to see the Devastator come out as well. Just push the board you already have. The bridge between turn 4 and 10 is very large. I don't think Pathra might. She might be, depending on what DawN's hand is, she might struggle to get to the point where this Omega Devastator Battlecry will be used to kill something.
Right.
She opts to shield block. This does set her up to go armor up shield slam if a giant does come down from DawN. Fortunately for DawN, he has what we talked about earlier. He has the Elemental Vacation, Giant, Coin Conjurer's Calling. So even though Pathra can use shield slam to deal with one of these, she doesn't quite have the mana to deal with both. She could. Actually, she has to armor up this turn as well.
So that's the big problem for me is this setting up shield slam makes you pretty much always float 2 mana randomly, right? Whereas if there was a 4/5 on the board now, like the turn would look so much better. It wouldn't be perfect, of course. You're still in trouble, but you're going to be in trouble no matter what if DawN does one of the most powerful plays you can do in the game. Right? Like that's just going to happen. But I think it would have been a little bit more solid. Because the issue is, with this Militia Commander, for example, if you want to Militia Commander and go, then your turn ends with nothing on board.
Yeah, you're staring down a Giant, and you know your opponent has a Conjurer's Calling left.
And you can't even Militia Commander... there are so many options, but I think you might even either just Militia Commander Shield Slam, maybe, and save the 3/3? Because you can't do any damage preemptively to the Giant because you know there's a second Conjurer's.
Right, any damage
put
into it would be wasted.
Yes, there's no point. But maybe you do the preemptive damage by saving the minion. I mean, this is similar as well.
Yeah, taking off the minion that has more attack right now. developing more onto the board. I'm curious to see if DawN is going to try to chip off the armor or take a trade on the Clockwork Goblin and then go Conjurer's Calling. Could opt to also just play a Ziliax and say, I'm not going to Conjurer's Calling at all. He has a couple of options here. Especially with the Giant drawn, that's yet another option. Pathra is running 2 Brawls in her main list, so...
To be honest, there's even... not necessarily as powerful because it's a little bit more out of your control, but it's even Sorcerer's Apprentice, a couple of spells, and then the Mana Cyclone. But the only issue with that is you don't really want to give your opponent a good brawl with one big minion on board. So although it would generate a lot of value and maybe get you some crazy spells, and as if by by magic I summon the brawl into Patra's hand, But
well, suddenly Pathra does have a way to get ahead here. She could try to... The problem is everything else in her hand doesn't deal with a single minion on DawN's side right now. So with the Brawl being drawn, I wouldn't be surprised I wouldn't be surprised to see her just play the Brawl and say, all right, I need to win this 1 and 3, and that's how I win the game.
I think you just have to.
Yeah.
And also bear in mind, though, even if one giant, one of the big guys wins, then you've seen double Conjurer's Call now, so you can probably, especially with 7 armor, just deal with one giant for a turn or 2. Whoa, whoa. We saw yesterday, I think it was, unless all the games are blurring together, but Pathra went for a Dino-Matic against the Shark, plus 3 minions, and it didn't. It whiffed and just left the Shark alive. And there was a lot of discussion whether that was the right play or not between Pathra and some of the other American pros. But for me, I think you have to go for a bit more of a potentially more powerful play.
So at least with the main list, I don't believe Patra's going to be super favored. She does have some tools that help. She thinks perhaps she thinks that playing the Dino-Matic here might signal to DawN that she does not have a great way to answer this and might kind of bait him into playing more stuff onto the board, making the Brawl better.
The one point here is the 7 armor effectively negates 1 swing of the Grave Armor.
We've seen Apprentice come down from DawN.
The problem is DawN doesn't have to overcommit to the board to have a good turn.
Right. I mean, you have 15 power on board. You don't need to do that a whole lot. You saw your opponent didn't really develop anything. Well, she developed a Dino-Matic, but that doesn't help her quite clear the board. The 4 power on her side does technically threaten the Grave Horror if she has just 1 more damage, or even a Militia Commander from hand could do the remaining 5 damage to the Grave Horror. Looks like it is going to be a Mana Cyclone turn from DawN. He's launching the missiles.
Especially after seeing 1 Shield Slam. In a roundabout way, DawN won't care too much about armor because you're going to destroy it anyway, right? You're putting so much damage that if you win the board here with minions like this, you end the game in like 2 turns anyway. So, oh wow, Fireball, a counter spell, Cinderstorm for some extra damage maybe, and also Research Project just isn't too bad. Maybe can mess around with Pathra a little bit, or dodge some bombs if DawN wants to go for a full hand at any given point.
I'm not sure if I like this too much from DawN. This opens him up to, I believe, a triple Warpath turn would... Oh no, it wouldn't clear the board. The Grave Horror is at 5 health.
And also, to be honest, going into turn 7 with this hand, do you care if your opponent spends all the mana on triple Warpath?
You have an Astromancer.
You have Astromancer, you have Giant, and obviously Sea Giant won't be live again, but still you have strong plays to follow up with anyway, and then your opponent would just spend that turn doing nothing. Okay, Cyclone lived, and there's even Weapons Project as well to clean it up.
So Pathra being patient with the Brawl did manage to get a little bit extra out of it, although she's still not in a great spot. The Mana Cyclone's not that threatening, but Astromancer's coming down next turn perhaps. There's still a Giant left in DawN's hand. He has threats lined up for quite a bit.
Oh, Rope Pressure. Is it going to happen again?
Is this the first nose door move, Grandmasters?
No, second.
Second?
Remember I asked you about it yesterday.
Oh, right.
Insta-killed it. But remember, I think Pathra was one of the players who suffered from the rope the other day, right?
Defending the gates here.
Get rid of that.
It's an expensive. It's a lot of resources going into it, yeah.
And but there's not much else Pathra can do. Like I said, the problem with the Omega Devastator is, well, it's still another 2 turns. Well, okay, 1 turn till it can become live, but it's huge.
Is she going to make it that long is the question.
Well, that was my point in playing it just on curve. Like, from turn 4 to 10 against this deck, against this mage deck,
they're not going to pass,
you
right?
could just die.
Yeah.
And now, just again, it's just what is the answer? I don't even know what the Discover answer is. Some kind of taunt?
Kind of. Not quite. I mean, if you play that, DawN's just going to say, all right, I'm not going to... He might actually sink damage into it, perhaps, but I mean, you're on 15 health. I mean, from DawN's perspective, he just has lethal setup.
Got Fireball in hand.
Yeah.
There's even, depending on the minion, Security Rover, obviously a unique one, but there's even Fireball and Cinderstorm from hand, which is just tons of damage. Like,
curious to see if Patra's going to play Weapons Project here just to gain the extra armor, or if she's just going to armor up. She does go Weapons Project.
You need to be as safe as possible. You gain 4 armor, right?
Still dead to Fireball, I believe. There's 15 damage on the board, and the Fireball from hand is going to close out the game for DawN.
And all the while, the Omega Devastator is in hand. That could have put forward just a little bit more pressure at least.
It may not have ended up, you know, in a win for Pathra, but it would have at least helped her fight for the board. I mean, this way she's dead on turn 9. The Devastator didn't do anything.
Exactly, yeah. And, you know, I'm not saying it's 100% right or 100% wrong, but it just felt like a reasonable curve. And I feel like in this matchup, you do have, if you can, as the warrior, if you're the one being the aggressor, so let's go straight into game number 2. And Language Hack, I wanted to just discuss, like, you know, Patra's moved on to the big Mage Hunter variant of a list with the big Game Hunters, Super Colliders, and Execute. But let's talk about DawN. DawN is actually stuck to his primary list when his secondary list, to me, looks like it's counter warrior deck.
So DawN's secondary list would be cutting 2 Sea Giants and a Ziliax to add in a second Banana Buffoon and 2 Questing Adventurers. The Questing Adventurers versus Warrior tend to just be an extra threat. The Sea Giant, of course, is a threat, but against Warrior doesn't flood that much. So it's difficult to get the Sea Giants down, at least at an early turn. Later on in the game, sure, you can spend 10 mana on it, but when you have a deck this powerful, you don't want to spend 10 mana playing a Giant, you want to spend 3 mana playing a Giant. Right. So interesting to see that DawN's stuck with his primary list, and we'll see if he believes it's good enough against Warrior.
Yeah, and a funny note as well is that the anti-Warrior deck has only 3 cards different, and there isn't an additional weapon removal. So there's only 1 Acidic Swamp Ooze in DawN's list, which you can see in his hand right there. But the big key is Super Collider is the anti-mage weapon that Warrior can run, and Pathra hasn't just teched 1. She has teched 2. So even if 1 Super Collider, often on the turn you play it, gets value, right? You know, you kill off the 2 minions most of the time, especially in this against Mage. But even if it's removed, there's a second one, and suddenly you have to start asking, although there's a lot of threats this Mage can put out, versus what, 4 swings of a Super Collider, plus the Warrior removal that it has anyway, I think Patra's got way more of a chance now.
I think definitely, especially with Dr. Boom in the opening hand, one of the 2 executes there as well. DawN finds his hand isn't doing quite enough, so he throws out a Stargazer Luna here to hopefully draw some cards, or potentially also contest this Eternium Rover, try to stop the armor gain from coming out.
Yeah, and luckily enough for DawN, there isn't a Militia Commander. And so there's no easy coin Militia Commander kill.
Right.
It's going to be the Execute. A nod from DawN knows 1 is gone, but there is a second in the deck. But most importantly, I'm with Pathra on that one, that Execute.
Yeah,
I feel like
leaving
Luna up, especially with this Cyclone variant, can get you in so much trouble. DawN can basically just fill his hand most of the time, or more importantly, draw into better cards if his hand sucks, which is what you don't want him to do.
Right, that makes a lot of sense. Pathra recognizing that Stargazer Luna can be quite a bit of a threat. She believes that the list she switched to now with all the anti-mage techs can give her enough of an edge now that she can take the win in the game and hopefully the set. So she understands that she just needs more time for herself to get to all those answers before DawN presents his threats.
I've got a question for you as well. Just if we get into the deep part of the deck building,
sure.
Is in Patra's tertiary deck that she's playing right now, she used the maximum amount of 5 cards that you can change. You can change 5 or less. You cannot change more than 5 at all, right? And one of the cards, she's removed the bomb package, so double Clockwork, double Wrench Caliber, and Blastmaster Boom. Mm-hmm. Is it strange that Harrison isn't removed? And you could just run a Clockwork or run a Wrench Caliber. Like, is that, because it's strange to me. I think on surface, I would have just thrown a Harrison out and let myself have a 3-mana 3/3 in the deck, because especially versus Mage, like, it's just decent. But what do you think about that?
I think if you're moving the package, all of it together, it probably makes a lot more sense than that. Sure, Harrison's a 5-mana 5/4, but there's still uses of it in the deck. She is running Weapons Project, so she can use Weapons Project in combination with Harrison Jones to draw 3 cards and get to her answers. But also, Clockwork Goblin coming out early on 3 doesn't really help you too much. It means you're not arming, so it's more difficult to get to the armor shield slam that you want to deal with the first threat. In some cases, you can use a Clockwork Goblin and a Militia Commander as follow-up for 8 damage to kill a giant, but it's kind of a not quite a corner case, but that doesn't happen that frequently if you're only running one Clockwork Goblin. And at that point, you are also using 2 cards to deal with 1 giant, so it's not quite the most efficient way. So I think she did just want to make sure she has as many cards as possible that can help her either draw to her answers or have the answers themselves.
And funnily enough, even at this point, it's a display of like an extra small thing of, well, if your opponent doesn't have a great start, they also don't have great ways of just dealing with a 5/4. So, you know, this Giant's played, you know, DawN's had to play a Giant into this Harrison, and Pathra needs minimal extra damage to kill this off now. And also, I would actually kind of like to just see the Shield Slam come down and just keep pushing with this Harrison now. Just start threatening a bit of damage. Why not?
Yeah, I definitely liked her playing out the Harrison Jones last turn, not saving it for the One of Weapons project, just saying, all right, Mage isn't developing, let me try to do something, right? Mage is going to have a tough time dealing with this Harrison Jones. If I can push 5 every turn, that's pretty good. From DawN's perspective, he didn't have Conjurer's Calling, so just developing the Giant is more than enough. Make Pathra have the answers. You've already seen him execute.
Okay, yeah, bit of a nod from DawN. It's like another Giant, and also it actually restores 8 health to your own hero. So this extra damage that Patra's pushing with Harrison is going to get more or less negated by the Astromancer summon.
Patra trying to figure out how she wants to tackle this.
It's called Boom on 7, and just trade off the 5.
You could.
Again, you'll find out very quickly casting with me, unless you are literally dead, I always want to play Blastmaster Boom on 7. Because again, Patra's got so much armor already. She, outside of, I think, overextending with resources, she's not going to clear the board regardless, so I don't know. I like spending the mana this turn. Deal with it afterwards.
I kind of like developing the Super Collider here, actually.
Okay.
Yeah, punching the Astromancer means she takes less damage. This is good. She knows that DawN is running both an Acidic Swamp Ooze and a Harrison in his primary deck. So she knows that it can be difficult to get Super Collider value, and especially if using Harrison or Ooze kind of stops DawN from developing something bigger this turn, that can be helpful as well. She does have a lot of armor to work with, but she has used a Shield Slam already, so I don't think she's too concerned about...
Right.
I mean, obviously having more health is good, but I don't think it's that imperative she stays at the highest possible armor total just yet. And this way she does get to keep her Harrison on board again, continuing the pressure.
That's true.
The longer you could... I mean, you don't... Obviously playing just... Finding multiple turns to play Boom is good because it's 7 mana, and obviously it doesn't do anything other than, you know, this Battle Cry, but that turn it's not doing a whole lot by itself. I do like her decision to just stay on the board instead. DawN's trying to figure out what he wants to throw down here. It looks like he's messing over the Ooze to get rid of the Super Collider.
Yeah, that you almost can't play anything else. If Super Collider's there, anything you play often just dies anyway.
Yeah.
But now the follow-up is kind of mediocre. Maybe just
not a whole lot to develop either.
Ooh, okay.
So this is one of the ways you can use Khadgar. It's not only just on Conjurer's Calling, you can summon multiple mirror images here. And using the Khadgar plus mirror images, spending 3 mana, developing 5 things on board, which makes the Sea Giant cheaper.
Oh. And on demand, Patra can just BGH this Giant all the way home. And this is... It's just a highlight of this deck as well. Like, that might not have been the most obvious turn in the world to most people from DawN, but it's powerful because you've just activated a Sea Giant from nowhere, which is insane. Like, we said that Sea Giants were the hard cards to play in this matchup if you were keeping them. But DawN made it look a little bit easier, but now Patra with the BGH, nice answer, and Patra's not in a big rush to finish this game either, so these mirror images aren't really a huge threat right now.
She chooses to armor instead of quitting at the Militia Commander. I wonder if she might have wanted to do that instead, just push even more onto the board. Because again, DawN doesn't have removal. He's not running Flame Strikes. He's not running, you know, anything other than Ray of Frost, which is kind of single target and not an efficient way to clear minions. But she opts to just pick some more armor. She's not under a lot of pressure. Perhaps she just doesn't want to throw out the Militia Commander. This could also be signaling to DawN, perhaps, that, oh, maybe I have a Brawl. I don't want to kill that many mirror images. Let's commit more to the board from you.
This turn is sick.
This turn is pretty cool.
I completely agree with what you've said, but this turn is sick.
No, it is.
Ray of Frost, Evocation, Cyclone. Haha, I think is the correct term.
So sometimes in this matchup, you want to wait as long as possible to get more than just 3 fireballs. The thing is, Patra's been answering... Oh my goodness.
Yeah, and so you get more than 3 fireballs, language hacker.
Okay,
I mean,
sorry,
like,
I didn't know it was in the box. I'm sorry. But Patra's been answering every threat that DawN's been presenting, so DawN's just saying, I can't wait forever and just get more fireballs. She's just going to get out of control. She's already winning boards, so let me do something now that'll let me actually, you know, take control of the board. And the Antonidas lets him do just that.
And it's still not an answer to Antonidas.
I think, yeah, DawN was shaking his head there, but he'll be happy to see when this turn is over that his Antonidas is still on the board.
Fireball, ping 2 fireballs.
Sigh of relief, something finally sticks, and this is quite a big payoff to stick, right? Every turn you can just launch 2 fireballs. If she so chooses.
So there's 20 damage this turn, and the hand doesn't change.
Right? This is why Antonidas is a good tech card in this matchup. Against other decks, sometimes you don't have the time to play it because it's not very defensive, but against Warrior, hide behind a few mirror images, they don't have a brawl. Haha.
Yeah, Patra's done a good job of just gaining a ton of armor, but this is almost half of Patra's health this turn. And as I said, DawN has lost 0 fireballs.
Right.
So there is still, what, 5 more fireballs left in the deck? Like, oh, in the hand, sorry.
Yeah. DawN should know that at turn 10 now, Patra can bring down an Omega Devastator, so this Antonidas will not hang around forever. She did pick up a Brawl as well. Probably not what she's going to use now.
Yeah. And DawN nods. It's like you expect this play by turn 10, and there's so many cards she's not played for a while.
I have not once played an Antonidas against Warrior and had it live for you know, bounce back to my turn and find it again on the board. So
DawN's a lucky guy then.
Yeah, doesn't happen very often.
You take those.
Exactly.
I think is the correct saying.
Yeah. That's what the kids are saying.
Yeah, that's what the cool kids.
This will be a good time for a
I think I've heard Zalay and Ike say that more than anyone else in my life.
So Patra has some options here. She can just use the Dynomatic to clear everything on the board. It only lets her push 1 damage, but maybe she thinks she wants to be more aggressive. Alternatively, she can develop these returning rovers, which, in combination with the Warpath, which she doesn't have in her hand yet, could get you know, her out of range of all these fireballs. I mean, 5 fireballs is what, 30 damage? She's technically out of range now, but
I'm just interested. Honestly, I would have just snapped Dynomatic there. There was 5 health on board, and you could have pushed with the minions.
Well, Dynomatic can also help you clear the next thing that DawN develops.
That's true. That's true. It's I think it's just honestly a difference in playstyle. But all I saw then was like what 6 damage to face.
It was just been 1. The Omega Devastator only had Rush.
Oh, sorry, Rush. Of course. Okay, I take it all back. I'm an idiot. Nope, you're completely right. The Rush changed everything.
DawN recognizing here that he can't just go face. He does need to clean up these rovers. The threat of Warpath is too big. And even the threat of just Aziliax coming down on any of these mechs will really put a rut in his game plan if he tries to go full face. So he knows he has to take this a bit longer and actually use these fireballs over the course of the rest of the game, not just the next 2 turns to try and burn out Patra.
Yep. And there's still just this Harrison's just waiting for DawN as well, just for when that Super Collider's equipped. I doubt DawN is going to use it on a weapons project when he knows there's a second Super Collider in the deck. I think often with this hand especially, he can just wait a little bit more.
It depends how the game plays out. I mean, if he thinks he's taking it to fatigue, I suppose he can wait for the Super Collider, but if he thinks he's giving Patra too much time to find the rest of her tech cards, he might just play it on anything to get it to get value.
The problem is I don't know if he can win if he lets a Super Collider swing 3 times. I think that's a lot of removal from 1 card.
If Patra does develop the weapons project first, I don't know from DawN's perspective if he can win against the Super Collider. Like, he has no threats right now. He just has some spells, a Harrison and a Mana Cyclone. It's hard to win with just spells when your opponent is at full health and has ways to generate armor and stick on board.
This Magic Trick might end up becoming pretty clutch as well if there could be some card draw.
Yep.
Or even maybe at this point another Conjurer's calling from it or something.
That wouldn't be bad. You need some gas from DawN.
Oh,
well, that's gas.
That'll do. That'll do.
Plays it pretty quickly. Can think about playing Magic Trick, but he might want to save that for Mana Cyclone turn.
Okay, 5/5 and a 6/6. It's something. Ping off the 1/1 that's gaining the armor, and just say, you know what? Initiative over to you, Pathra. See what you can do here. Now we will see the Dynamatic get some work done.
I'd probably see a Super Collider here. You have a Militia Command on the board that could take damage from the Dynamatic, and this is about as good as a Super Collider is going to get. I think from Patra's perspective, you know that DawN's kind of running out of threats.
Yeah, I was just meaning you could just trade the Militia Commander away, right, and do it this way.
I would have liked to see Super Collider here. Maybe she thinks that DawN is sitting on Harrison. If she's tracking cards, of course, or with Deck Tracker, she can know that there's, I believe, three natural cards in DawN's hand, and one of them has been there for a while, so perhaps she's trying to play around the Harrison by not developing the Super Collider here.
Yeah, I think I like this play because the problem is that I also feel the longer the game's going on, the less the Dynamatic is going to do. Whereas the Super Collider is always getting work done, because if it's not getting work done, then DawN has no threats, and then you're winning anyway. Whereas the Dynamatic, you know, say DawN makes a big board of Giants, well, cool, 5 random damage, it doesn't do enough. Whereas on that board, it just about, with the help of the Hero Power and a trade, did the job. So I do like this overall.
Discovering an Arcane Intellect off the Magic Trick, let him...
Ooh, okay.
Alright.
Giant. He's getting there.
He's on 10 cards. Plays the Mirror Image so that he doesn't burn a card from his deck. Hero Power Dynamatic will clean up this board if Pathra chooses to do that. Lets her push 7.
It might not, right? Because the
Town Crier, right.
I mean, it's still likely to just get the job done anyway. I'm not saying. Yeah, I'm not having just a Worgen mech.
Oh.
But yeah, right. It's still plenty doable. I wouldn't be too upset to see that from Pathra. Again, I do kind of like playing the mind games of just almost forever holding the Collider.
Waiting until the point where the second giant does come down, yeah?
Yeah, because if both players don't play those things, so the Collider or a wave of big threats, then Pathra wins. Right? Like that, so she can just wait all day for this second Super Collider and just sit there. DawN has to play a threat or he will lose. Yeah. And then when he does play threats, then you at least get one really valuable swing out of that Super Collider for Pathra. Oh, and now double giant.
Magic Trick first. See what's in the box. I think he was trying to find another Conjurer's Calling here. Didn't quite find it.
Nova, not the end of the world.
Nova might be the pick. I spare I could buy you some more health, but I think you need to prevent Pathra from using the minions on board.
Nova Giant. I love this as well. Playing the Sea Giant while it's playable with that Nova, and saying, well, guess what? My Mountain Giant's going to be cheap next turn anyway, so it's not really a problem. And also playing around Super Collider.
So far, no clear way to deal with the. Oh.
There you go. That'll work.
Saving the coin for Coin Bulldozer.
It's pretty solid. And again, this Mage deck can do some wacky things. It cannot really deal with a wide board. Look at DawN's face. It's like, come on! Discover Bulldozer coin play trade. But he's probably smiling back again now. His Mountain Giant into the Conjurer's Calling.
Well, we'll see if it's enough. He knows that Pathra only has 9 cards left in her deck. It's very likely she has something that can help her answer this board. These are all the Conjurer's Calling. Ooh.
Brawl and Shield Slam means that you are guaranteed a clear at worst. At
this
best.
Is lethal.
Oh wait, there's just enough damage, right?
Yeah, 18.
Oh, what am I talking? I complete look. Bulldozer is not a card that is often knocking about and doesn't often get a second attack.
That's true.
But the damage from Bulldozer is just going to clean this game up. I was trying to look at defensive options because Pathra. Who do you think's got it now? That we know which versions they're still playing, do you think Patra's just got the advantage here?
I think after last game, I might have to say that the Warrior with all these techs might be able to come out on top against the Mage.
Yeah, we see all the removals. Just a small note, just to give you an update on the techs. It's double BGH and extra Execute, which sums up to 2 in Patra's list now. And for me, most importantly, double Super Collider is just the biggest of deals.
DawN kept a few cards in his opening hand. Mountain Giant, obviously one of the cards you want early on against lots of decks, but primarily Warrior. Pathra drawing some early removal. With this Town Crier paired together, she might be able to deal with the at least the first half of a Giant, depending on whether or not DawN chooses to save the Giant until he can Conjurer's Calling it on the same turn, or if he wants to just play it out on the curve.
Also, as well, you got to say, just already this Execute just being available along with the Dynomatic and double Militia Commander means that, you know, there's so much that Pathra can do proactively, and being able to just deal with anything that DawN chucks onto the board means that these minions just being on the board are frustrating because they can activate the Execute already without requiring something else.
I think DawN playing out this Apprentice is kind of a nod to the Executes that Pathra has in her deck. This Town Crier being left on board means that an Execute will be able to clean something up. So playing out the Apprentice here, even without getting that much value off of it, because next turn he can't do that much other than save Arcane Intellect.
Yep. And there's a huge payoff, isn't there, in the form of that Arcane Intellect for DawN, because if this Sorcerer's Apprentice doesn't go down, and we see that it can't go down, then, you know, he just gets to draw more cards for a little bit cheaper, and, you know, probably doesn't do a lot with that 1 mana, but still means he can get that through, and maybe he draws something like a magic trick that he goes for because it'll be 0 mana.
Yeah. There's some pretty big high rolls he can hit off of the Arcane Intellect. If he happens to hit Elemental Evocation and Cyclone, that'd be pretty powerful.
Yeah, exactly. He could draw like either way in a group of Elemental Evocation, Cyclone, and just any other spells would really be good for the turn.
Start off with the Intellect, see what happens.
Also, most importantly, makes his Mountain Giant cheaper.
I think we're going to see that being it. Saving coins so that you can actually play Giant Coin Conjure Calling on 5 I think is kind of important because it gets out the threat early. I'm curious to see if he's going to trade into the Town Crier to prevent a future Execute from coming out, or if he wants to chip away this armor to help.
I think you trade, right?
Yeah.
Because everything that Pathra is realistically going to do this turn would only be a benefit if you traded.
Right.
If there's a Militia Commander, if there's anything... Well, you know there's not much else because nothing was played the previous turn, so there's no answer last turn. And even if there's a on-curve or Mega Devastator, well, you'd still rather trade a minion the Sorcerer's lives anyway, and so on. So, yeah, nice. Small things, but good things from DawN.
DawN has the option to just wait, which means next turn his Mountain Giant will cost 3 mana, and on 5 mana with a coin, he can Giant Coin Conjurer's Calling. That's what he does. Doesn't want to play out the Mountain Giant just by itself and have it shield slammed or shield block, shield slammed or executed. Wants to make sure he can get Conjurer's Calling value off of the Giant, because if that first Giant is dealt with and you play it just on turn 4, what else are you doing until the Astromancer comes down, right? You have to worry a couple more draws to get some answers, and that's how you can quickly lose the game. So I really like DawN saving the Giant here.
Is there a big reason for Pathra not to play Ziliax this turn and just load it up preemptively?
I want to see the Ziliax.
Because I don't like Armor Up Pass, that always feels bad, and everything else is way worse because Ziliax is still a good answer when it's on the board, but the other minions are not. A lot of the minions are Battle Cry
I really like the Ziliax for tempo.
Wow.
If she had Shield Slam in hand, perhaps Armoring Up could, there's an argument for, but I think here this might be a misstep, just getting the Ziliax out on the board.
Whoa.
Of course you can use it later to heal up, but the main thing is getting to later on, right?
Right. And the thing is, the Armor Up helps with the Shield Slam. The Ziliax does 3 damage, which is more than the Armor Up would gain with a Shield Slam in most instances, right? So, I don't know, I really like the Ziliax there, because also, Ziliax often doesn't die. If it dies, your opponent's developing 0 minions most of the time. If it doesn't die, well, you have Ziliax, which has Divine Shield, and a Militia Commander, which is very, very powerful in terms of you can just kill anything that they play.
Right. I mean, now, with Pathra having less on the board, an obvious play, there's two main plays here, right? You can just Big Game Hunter one of the minions, or you can trade Execute. If she had a Ziliax on the board and she does the same thing this turn, either Big Game Hunter or Execute, the other minion won't connect face. You'll maintain your armor, and the Ziliax will, even if it gets pinged off, and say the Giant or the Graveheart would kill it off, that's 7-8 damage. It's not going to face. And that even gives you another option this turn. If you had Ziliax on board, instead of using Big Game Hunter Execute, you could now use the Ziliax Divine Shield with a Militia Commander from hand. A Militia Commander, which not always would end up clearing a big minion, could now be used with the Ziliax.
That's it, right? When you include in smaller costed cards, it's important to spend the mana on the big cost quickly and get it like just preemptively live, because then, as you said, the Execute and the Ziliax technically is played in the same turn, right?
Right.
Because it can attack just like it would with Rush anyway. And you have the mana floating, so yeah, that turn 5, I don't know. That looked like a bit of wasted potential there. DawN, not too much of a surprise, just going to go with his Conjurer's Calling. And going to go with another one as well and say, let's go.
All right.
Patra's just got Brawl.
So you have a 40% chance of winning the Brawl. If you bump something into the Grave Horror and then Brawl, you have a 25% chance to win it, but then you also have a 25% chance to be able to clear the board with an Execute. I think you'd probably just want to Brawl by yourself. Well, by itself, sorry.
Yeah. Because I think that the payoff for winning it is more than the payoff for executing, right?
The thing is, you do know that DawN has... DawN used 2 Conjurer's Callings this turn. One was the second half of the first one he used, and the second one was the first half of the second Conjurer's Calling. So Pathra knows that there's another Conjurer's Calling in hand. So she has to decide if she wants to take a bigger risk with the Brawl to just win it out and say, all right, I don't want you to... I want to try to win the Brawl. Or she can hedge a little bit and say, all right, there's... Even if I don't win the Brawl here, there's a chance I can still execute and prevent you from Conjurer's Calling something. But I do think Brawl is the correct play here, and Pathra agrees. Okay.
And there you go. The payoff's there, and DawN shaking the head as he's just seeing that, yes, he did actually lose the Brawl. Pathra gets to push 4, which might not be the most mind-blowing thing in the world, but most importantly, the high attack of the big Game Hunter means that it's easier to trade off against other minions next turn. Patra's got like an extra form of removal because this BGH lived, and I think that's like the 3rd or 4th Geppetto we've seen from summons.
Deja vu.
Yeah. And now what's the play going to be this time?
Well, she has options. Executing either of these really isn't what you want to be doing. You can use one of the Militia Command. You can use the Militia Commander from hand to clear up the Astromancer if she chooses. She can go Dynamatic Execute. Perhaps using an Execute here is fine. You do know that there's another Conjurer's Calling in hand, so preventing an 8-drop from being generated here is probably just good.
Yeah, one, there's 2 Executes in hand, but also if you held the Execute, then you're going to just need to play it next turn anyway, but it's worse because there's more minions. So this is just a clean kill. I do like this quite a lot. But now though, Invocation's there, Sorcerer's Apprentice there. DawN's just 1 mana Cyclone away from a good time right now.
So DawN does have the option to just go Giant, use the last Conjurer's Calling naturally in his deck. Perhaps we'll see more later on with Magic Tricks or Cyclones.
But this is a huge hurdle point, right?
Yeah.
The Giants are gone, apart from these 2 on board, if they're cleared. The Giants are gone, base Conjurer's Callings are gone. There's also 1 Astromancer gone, and there is still a lot of removal left in Patra's deck. It's kind of insane. There's the 1 BGH, there's the Execute in hand, and 2 Super Colliders left. And there's still Dr. Boom, Omega Devastators, the usual package as well.
That's the thing with Warrior in these techs. If you can make it to... And that's why Big Game Hunter is a big thing, because it helps you get to turn 10, at which point you can actually use the Devastators already in your deck, and then you just have so many answers. There are 2 Sea Giants left for DawN, but those are a bit trickier to use. One of the main reasons why the Conjure Mage is so powerful is that the mana cost at which it uses these big threats, right? This 12 mana Giant is actually 3 or 4 mana often when you're playing it against Warrior. The Sea Giants, if you spend 10 mana on it, it's a bit more fair. The Warrior has, another 10 mana to try and deal with it. But when
it's more like a you go, I go thing, right?
Yeah, but with Mountain Giant, it's like, I'm going to spend 3 mana on 8/8. Your turn.
Seems good. Did you play Hearthstone from the very beginning, like beta?
Just outside of beta.
Do you remember the Twilight Drake?
Yeah.
Was plus attack and plus health?
Twilight Drake was huge.
Oh, that was abs. Imagine if Blizzard printed a card like that now. People go nuts. Yeah, there's a cheap card that was actually better than Mountain Giant in most instances.
Yeah. Okay. DawN has seen a Brawl, so using the images here to block Super Collider and also letting him to develop the other Sea Giant.
Ooh. Okay. Again, very important, as you said, to play around Super Collider, but honestly, Brawl Ziliax is just...
It's not
fine.
bad. It's not, depending on what lives, of course. If one of the Giants that way, Patra needs to decide if she thinks this is worth a Brawl. And she does. She's probably just counting the threats left in DawN's deck and thinking, well, both Conjurer's Callings are both Conjurer's Callings are gone. If I just deal with this board, there's not that much left he can do.
There's also, you could just roll for Devastator, right?
Yeah.
Ooh, Heckle.
That could.
Is Heckle? Oh, Antonidas, right?
Yeah.
Is that the?
Maybe we pass on the Heckle bot this turn and say I'll take the 8 on the noggin.
But I did like the brawl there because I agree with what you were halfway through that with the Giants potentially gone.
Yep.
There's like one Astromancer Sea Giant all gone. The Conjurer's Callings are gone. There's
not much
Pathra only
left
has to
brawl.
survive through an Antonidas, which outside of previous game is actually hard to get that many fireballs off. You normally get 1 to 2.
Right.
So he has to survive Antonidas and like maybe one more big board. And that's it. And then
Actually,
there's literally nothing left.
often you get much more than 1 or 2, depending on how the games play out. If Antonidas is in your hand early, you can try to plan it out and save Ray of Frost and stuff.
Yeah, I feel like on average you've normally done that, but you've normally done a big spell turn,
Right.
Unless you
to
have
set up
literally
before.
Antonidas early. So I feel like normally you have the big spell turn, and then the spells aren't always low enough cost. So I feel like say 2 is a reasonable average for Antonidas turns, unless you're purposely saving tons of spells. Which then, of course, you can go nutty if you just Antonidas, Sorcerer's Apprentice, go.
Right. I think that's what we're going to see DawN head towards throughout the rest of this game.
Oh, okay.
He does have an Astromancer left he could use for as threats. He knows both brawls are gone, so he has to consider what's left for removal, right? There's an Execute left, there's a couple Warpaths, which don't quite clear this board. There are 2 Shield Slams left. We haven't seen any of those, but Pathra does not have enough armor to work with. With the Dr. Boom draw, if she had a Shield Slam, she could remove this Giant, but it's just not there.
I think you go for Omega. Omega, what am I talking about? Dynamatic.
And try to hit the 1 damage on the
One
back.
damage needs to hit, and you have 5, and there's 4 minions, and also 2 of the minions have 2 health.
Right.
So the chance on them dying obviously greatly increases the chance on the final the final hits hitting the Giant. So I think you've got to make that play, because otherwise you are taking a big hit.
Agreed. You can't take too much damage. She's dealt with a lot of threats, but you need to make sure that when you finish dealing with all of them, you have more than 12, 15 health to work with, because fireballs.
Oh, first one.
Perfect.
And even killing off one of the taunts is nice too.
You take those.
Because it would be extremely unlikely to kill the Luna.
Right.
So you'll take another minion, right?
Can you imagine if we killed the Luna and damaged the Giant? That would have been best case scenario.
Yeah, but that Dynamatic's not got bombs, it's got a sniper rifle.
Giant, tempting to play because it draws you a card here, but it's a little too expensive.
I think DawN wants to become the Archmage for just a second.
Well, the thing is, this turn signals to DawN, okay, I'm going in right now. Both executes have been used from Pathra, so it's going to be very difficult for her to deal with this Antonidas. And she's not, got crazy amounts of health to work with. So fireballs by themselves are just going to probably close out this game. Depends what Patra's drawing. If she happens to be able to draw a Shield Slam, she does have an answer for the Antonidas with a Dr. Boom in hand.
This Ray of Frost was actually pretty clutch as well, right?
On your own mirror image? Or on the
no,
Dynamatic?
on the Dynamatic. Because otherwise there was the trade into the 0-1 Super Collider Ziliax
Right.
to actually deal with the Antonidas.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, Shield Slam now though.
Yeah.
Hero Power Boom Shield Slam. That was pretty
draw.
sick draw, actually.
Deals with a Shield Slam. Fortunately, that does spend all of her mana this turn, and there is still an Apprentice and a Luna on the board. 3 Fireballs can be launched. That's 18 damage with 5 left on board, 23. So there's 9 off lethal. There is still a Ziliax in the deck or in hand, so DawN knows that. He has to consider whether or how to kind of dance around that, because if you leave the Dynamatic up and you get Ziliax, that can kind of be a problem.
Also, as well, a benefit for Pathra is she can actually Hecklebot now that she knows Antonidas is gone.
Right.
And Ziliax as well.
That's quite a large mech.
Yeah, and also just 6 health on demand, but it's just no... Maybe some sweet, sweet justice for DawN is now he has the Bulldozer instead of Pathra, and that might just be enough to push him over the edge. There's no way to take the shield off.
No, there's not. Oof.
These mirror images are causing havoc with
Right?
the Super Collider. Absolute havoc.
It's crazy seeing some of these cards. Mirror Images hasn't seen play in how long?
Honestly, they were played in Flamewaker days sometimes,
Right.
like sometimes as extra like cheap procs for Flamewaker. But yes, it's not been played seriously for a very long
It's
time.
crazy seeing cards like these from the classic set that when you look at, they're like, oh, that doesn't do that much, but it can do a lot.
It's all just about support, right?
Right. Patra's looking for something. She might have to make a defensive play here with a safeguard, but I don't know if it's enough.
And also the problem, this Divine Shield is nuts.
It's
the problem
actually
is she can't do
incredibly
the
frustrating.
Ziliax play unless she Omega Devastators.
Oh, the Rover.
Divine. Oh, okay.
So the Rover lets her deal with
Well-
the Mermage, but it's still not enough to be able to deal with Bulldozer this turn.
I was wondering
Yeah.
if you Omega Devastator, the Divine Shield, and then Ziliax trade. So you heal, and the shield is off the dozer. It's a stretch. Don't get
Okay,
me wrong.
sure.
But then you've got to think, well, although Pathra knew there were fireballs, to be fair, so the Ziliax would have been cleaned up by fireballs anyway. It just would have been a bit of extra healing. Would it have been enough? Almost certainly not. At least if not that turn overall. And DawN